So I'd like to index this thing in a fashion that we could lower the legal immigration to make it adjust to the job numbers that are created. I mean, why in the world would we want to be a nation that's a welfare state that brings people in, even legally, that are going to overflow into this system and create more demand for jobs than actually exist? And furthermore, we're a welfare state because, it's Robert Rector's study, I was remembering those numbers, $32,000 in overall drawdown of welfare benefits and $9,000 in taxes paid by that high school dropout family of 4. So I was in that $23,000 range. Was it $22,239, or what was that exact number? Do you remember, Robert? I just tested him. He is actually the guy that's numbers have saved America from the open borders agenda. So why would we drive down the first? Well, wait a minute. I better lay another principle down here. Labor is a commodity. I mean, we have gold and oil and corn and beans and all these things that are in the commodities, but labor is also a commodity. And it needs to be established by supply and demand in the marketplace. If you have an oversupply of labor, especially lower skilled, lower educated labor, you're going to have low wages. And I mean, I grew up in the town that was the flagship town for Iowa beef packers, which now is a part of Tyson. And I was there before there ever was a critter hung on a hook. And I watched this thing grow. And I've seen what happened. The people that went to work down there in 1961 were making about the same kind of money as a teacher with a college degree. That was also the case in Storm Lake, where I was born, when high grade was shut down back in the late 70s. Today, the workers in those plants are still open, the workers are making about half the money that a teacher is making. And that's because they've driven down the labor supply by oversupplying it, by opening the borders, by recruiting down into southern Mexico, emptying out entire towns of able-bodied people. What do you say to the American-born that doesn't want to go to college, that wants to go to the plant and punch the time clock and go back and go to his kid's football game and go fishing and maybe buy a modest home and pay for that modest home and raise their children in a middle-income family? There is no opportunity out there today for the lower educated, maybe the high school dropout, maybe the high school degree, that American-born, because they can't compete. They can't compete with the illegal labor that's out there that's far more nimble, far more mobile. And if there's a job opening that comes up in Wyoming, next week they can have 1,000 people in there because the grapevine sends it out. And they're not tied to the land, not to the assets, so they don't have a home they have to worry about leaving. They just pick up and go. How many are too many? I would dial that number down. This number that we have today, I think it needs to be dialed down to 500,000 or less. And I think we need to set an immigration policy that's a selfish one that's designed to enhance the economic, the social, and the cultural well-being of the United States of America. Assimilation. It was, no, we hate it, we despise it, you're stealing our culture. We reject assimilation. Well, you're going to come to America and you don't want to become an American? You want to get on the welfare rolls? Do you believe America is a giant ATM? Just come in here and ka-ching and tap into the welfare system and then move on? We can't build a country if we don't build a country on people that believe in the rule of law, that are self-sustaining, self-providing, self-reliant, and have a vision of a common sense of pulling together. And we can build America with any people of any ethnicity. We just have to have common values, a common value system. And so I say I disagreed pretty strongly with President Bush and John McCain and President Obama. But I wanted to take you back to a time, January 6, 2004. I was looking this up as I was listening. January 6 was the eve of what was rumored to be and did become President George Bush's amnesty speech, the one where he launched the effort to do this bipartisan, led out of the White House amnesty into America. Now, I think this was a brainchild of Karl Rove's, and it certainly was something that President Bush believed in, and he couldn't be talked out of. But on the day before, on the eve of that speech, I sat down and I wrote a letter to the president, and I sent it to Karl Rove's email, as I knew it would get through. And this is the part of the last paragraph. And there's much other in it, but I won't do that. It said, and it's this: Karl, this issue will split the Republican Party. It is totally unnecessary. It's bound to yield negative results. No matter which side wins, the Democrats will be winners. Today, I only look like Tom Tancredo. Tomorrow, I will sound like Tom Tancredo. as will dozens of the most stalwart conservatives in Congress. Gibberish, but newly arriving immigrants will assimilate into the politics of the locale where they arrive. And if you don't believe that, go to Boston and find me an Irish Catholic Republican. There actually are 2 of them. Is it 3 of them now? All right, good, good. I know another one. And but there aren't very many, because politics are heritage. It's something that you learn that in a way you learn your religion. And if people don't understand the politics of America, and they come from Ireland and they go to Boston, they go with their good buddies down to the pub and they get involved and walk in the streets with the unions and the political activists. If they go to South Central LA down to Maxine Waters District, then what do they get if they are involved in politics at all? They're involved with the politics of their neighbors. They assimilate into the politics of the locale where they arrive. But there's work Americans won't do. We all know that's false. That there aren't enough Americans in the workforce. Before this economy went down, I looked at the Department of Labor's numbers. We had at that time 6.9 million working illegals in America by just uncontested numbers. I think it's more. So I looked through and I added up those that aren't in the workforce from 16 years old on up. And I did go to 74 because Walmart's hiring at 74 and we're paying unemployment benefits at 74. So, but in that age group, in those age groups, 16 to 74, Americans not working, 69 million. So I can remember those numbers. 6.9 million working illegals doing jobs Americans won't do, 69 million Americans not in the workforce for some reason. Couldn't we make 1 out of 10 of those 69 million an offer they couldn't refuse and put them to work, working for in the places where those jobs are? But I want to use that, what we have, I want to use the IRS. So the New IDEA Act stands for the New Illegal Deduction Elimination Act. And what it does is it sets the IRS up to help enforce immigration law, and it clarifies that wages and benefits paid to illegals are not deductible for federal income tax purposes. So when the IRS comes in and audits an employer, as they typically will do, they would run the Social Security numbers through E-Verify, and if that bounces their names back again, the IRS could say, sorry, that $30,000 or $40,000 that you paid to this individual isn't a business expense for you. You don't get to write that off like you would fuel or electricity or wages to an American. That's now goes over into the other column, which presumably is taxable. So the bottom line is your $10 an hour illegal becomes a $16 an hour illegal. And in the bill, we require the IRS to set up a system to cooperate with the Social Security Administration and the Department of Homeland Security so that the right, left, and middle hand know what each other are doing.